What's up, and everybody? Welcome back to another holiday episode of the Lucky Underdogs podcast. You see, we got the decorations. We real festive over here at Believe Network. Thank y'all for tuning in to another episode of the Lucky Underdogs podcast, brought to you as always by Believe Network and Goodman Productions. Thank y'all for tuning in on YouTube, Valley Sports in Ohio. However you are tuning in, we thank you for tuning in. As always, it's your boy Devin Butler here with my dog.
It's your boy CJ Prosise, and we the lucky underdogs, where we gonna always highlight them underdogs, the guys who don't get the media coverage, who don't get all the plays on the field, but when they get out there, they make their opportunity. And today we got my guy Ryan Roberts on here, the Irish Breakdown recruiting analyst, and we gonna go through some transfer portal stuff. We're gonna go through some recruits that we gonna be looking at coming in this next class. We're going to be talking about all the stuff going on right now with the portal. It's the stuff at Notre Dame, coaches leaving, players leaving. So let's get into it, man. We're excited to have you on, man. Appreciate you coming.
I appreciate both you guys for coming on, man. You obviously came on the Irish Breakdown podcast, which was a lot of fun. So I'm excited and thankful for you guys for having me on today, man. Honestly, this is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, man.
No doubt, man. Definitely glad to have you here, brother. Definitely.
Yeah.
So let's jump right into it, man. I think one of the things that we should start with, we didn't get to touch on this last week on our episode, but Coach Stucky getting let go, parting ways with our wide receivers coach, and it almost felt like it was kind of a precursor to what came this week, felt like half of the wide receiver room leaving as well. Just wanted to get your thoughts on that, Ryan. What did you think of that departure? What have you heard about that? Let's get a little bit of insight on that.
Yeah, I mean, it was a very unfortunate situation, obviously. I felt like there were a lot of things that you could really sell about Chancey Stucky, which was, from a recruiting perspective, he was a dynamite recruiter. I think from a just understanding of the game of football, you don't play at Clemson and then play the NFL as long as he did and not know the game inside and outs. But I think that what you ran into was he's still a young coach that was only in his third season ever as a position coach. And I don't think that the development in the room this year was fantastic. And there was a little bit of alienation that happens with some of the members of the wide receiver room. So at the end there, it was kind of preemptive that some guys were going to leave. But the decision was made basically from the top that, we had to make a change in that room from who's running it and, the everyday and to be the coach, obviously, of the wide receiver room. And unfortunately, again, you were going to lose some guys regardless because there were some bridges that were burned. There were just some relationships that were unrepairable at that point. And then Coach Stucky did have a good relationship with several members of the wide receiver room, obviously. So that led to Rico Flores Jr. leaving because he was a big Chancey Stucky guy. I think Chris Tyree had a really good relationship with Chancey as well. So there was just unfortunate. That was just kind of the little bit of the calm on the water at first. And once the splash happened, you just got the waves afterwards, unfortunately. So I think Notre Dame is already, obviously the news is out there that, Mike Brown, who's now the wide receiver coach and associate head coach of the University of Wisconsin, is more than likely, barring some type of setback, going to be the next wide receiver coach for Notre Dame. So obviously when it happens this quick, there was decisions that were being made even before the announcement was made, right? They were doing the search. And I think that they're going to be able to recover quickly and recover well from a recruiting perspective, getting some guys in the portal. But unfortunately, man, I really wanted it to work out with Chancey Stucky because I think that Coach Stucky was respected by a lot of people. I think he was a really good recruiter. Unfortunately, I just don't think he was the right guy for the job right now. It's kind of how I see it.
No,
definitely.
It definitely makes sense. It's kind of a lot of things going on. You saying, especially just as a fan perspective, looking, kind of looking in, being in that room at some point, before, you just seen a lot of miscommunications between the quarterback receivers, and that even when I was a time there, we had a lot of good receivers, but we also we didn't have those miscommunications all the time. It was all we knew what we had to do, we knew what was expected of us, and you didn't always see that this season from everybody. I definitely think you saw it from a couple of guys like you said. He definitely had probably some good relationships with a few guys who probably might have got a little bit more attention than the other guys, whatever. But that's just as far as the full room and the development of everybody, you can't have that. You got to have a full perspective of everybody out there being able to make plays, and that wasn't That wasn't a part of our team this year at all.
That was the most unfortunate part of CJ was like there's like this national perception that like Notre Dame isn't talented at receiver and they lack speed and this and that, right? And I'm just like, guys, like everyone like worships these recruiting rankings, right? The 4 stars, the 5 stars, all this type of stuff. That room is nothing but 4 stars, like nothing but 4 stars. Like we're not talking about a bunch of 3-star under recruited guys that lack talent that were just takes for, whatever reason. Like it was a very talented room that was not developed properly. It wasn't developed well enough. I mean, I'm watching guys like Tobias Merriweather, who has since entered the transfer portal, Braylon James, who just entered the transfer portal. I'm watching, a bunch of guys that I'm just like, I didn't see progression throughout the season, and like you want to see that progression from game 1 to game 12. You want to be able to see and say like, hey, the release packages got better. The top ends got better, getting in and out of breaks, understanding where to attack blind spots, like the nuances of the wide receiver position. I didn't feel like they took that next step this year. So you don't want to waste talent, obviously, at the end of the day, because that is a talented room. And I think that if they are developed properly, I think that they're going to surprise a lot of people. But obviously they have to deal with the lack of numbers right now that they have in that room and kind of rebuild it as quick as they can.
Definitely. And it's interesting that you bring up the rebuild. Just wanted to get a little bit of insight. I know I haven't been too privy to the recruiting cycle this time, but what are the receivers that are coming in looking like either out of high school, and what does it look like from the transfer perspective for Notre Dame coming up this year?
Well, 2024 class, I think, is going to be a class that can provide a lot of instant impact for this program. I really love this class. They have a 3-man class. Cam Williams is the guy that everyone talks about because he's the 5-star, like 90 minutes away, right? Like he's the 5-star right in Glenbard South in Glen Ellen, Illinois, but it's a suburb of Chicago, right? But so he's the kind of the golden boy, the poster child to a degree, 6'1.5", 190 pounds. Kid can fly. Kid's very nuanced, understands how to play the game. I mean, he can win vertically, can win after the catch. He's improved as a route runner over the last 2 years as well. He is a bona fide 5-star. He's considered that on the industry ranking and everything. So, and he's also a early enrollee. So he'll be here in January. And he's going to be expected to be that guy for this offense, right? Even if Notre Dame, because I think Notre Dame's going to get a couple really good wide receivers in the transfer portal. They've already gotten one today. But I think that they are going to do a really good job of kind of rebuilding that room the best they can and getting some guys that have college production and have had a lot of production. But I still anticipate Cam Williams coming in and having an impact. Like I anticipate him being on the 2 deep and being a player that you have to keep your eye on. So he's the mainstay. But it kind of overshadows the fact that like you have 2 other really good wide receivers in the class. Micah Gilbert is a kid out of North Carolina. Who he's from Charlotte Christian, not Charlotte Catholic. He's from Charlotte Christian. He's like 6'2", 205. He's like one of those dudes that you look at and you're like, kid's college ready, man. Like he can come in and play. He's a really good route runner, super physical, can win back shoulders, just a catch point guy. And I think that he can come in and he can play relatively early. He's also an early enrollee. And then the last guy is Logan Saldate, who's out in California. He's at Palma in Salinas, California. And he is kind of what you really would want in this offense as a slot receiver, like 5'11", 185, dynamic after the catch, though. Like really, really good. He's like one of those kids that he's like CJ Prosise, right? Like you find a little bit of space, you give him the rock, you just let him go. You know what I mean? Like he's one of those cats. So I think the wide receiver group in 2024 is you have the opportunity to have some instant impact there. And Notre Dame is also, like you mentioned, like they're attacking the transfer portal and they're going to try to get a couple guys. I anticipate at least 2 wide receivers in the transfer portal, maybe 3, depending on if the right 3 want to come. They got a commitment today from Chris Mitchell with a K. Chris Mitchell he's out of Florida International. He was a Florida kid originally, and he was a little bit of a lightly recruited kid, but 6'1", 175, over 60 receptions this past year, over 1,100 yards. The kid can go, man. Like he is really explosive and he can run. And it's one thing that Notre Dame needs more of. Like they need that dynamic ability to stretch the field a lot. And he's going to come in, and I think he's going to do that for Notre Dame. They're also going to be hosting, actually today they were hosting Josh Kelly out of Washington State. That was formerly of Fresno State. He also had like 60 something catches, near 1,000 yards this past year. So super productive. And then a guy that Notre Dame fans probably remember is Bo Collins that plays down at Clemson, right? He's been their leading receiver the last 2 years. Notre Dame recruited him hard, and he's a former 5-star recruit. He hasn't really lived up to the billing from a production perspective, but still over 500 yards last year, still some untapped potential. So I think out of that group of receivers, and there's more too, like Notre Dame is still looking at a bunch of other wide receivers on the market. But if you get a couple of those kids combined with the 3-man class, again, I think you have a chance to rebuild this wide receiver room pretty quick.
Definitely. Go ahead, CJ. I'll let you go.
I was gonna say, just going off, talking about the young receivers. I watched a couple of the young guys. Cam Williams, he's definitely gonna make an impact. He's a big body guy. He's a guy, kind of Notre Dame needs, just be able to throw the ball up to. Like, we just didn't have that last year because Jaden Thomas is injured, Deion Cozy injured. So having him next year to be a part of that group is gonna help. And then that Logan kid has got some juice. I watched him.
Yeah.
You can give it to him anywhere. He gonna make something happen. He got juice. He remind me of TJ Jones a lot, like route running wise, and then like even like after the catch. Like, so I'm excited to watch him get up there and make plays. But yeah, like you said, man, going after receivers in the transfer portal, it's crazy to hear guys having like 60 catches, 1,000 yards. Like, all right, I'm going to take
leaving.
Right.
What?
That's a hell of a season, brother. Like, what you doing?
Having a great year. You just like, all right, I'm out. Like, he was.
I think he was one of the top 5. He was like one of the top 5 leading receivers in college football last year. Chris Mitchell, which is why literally hit over 1,100 yards, but he's playing at Florida International. Wants to come up and show that he can play with the big boys, I guess. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's going to be interesting to see how quickly he translates.
Definitely. I think it's going to be good to have to get some of those older guys that are experienced in college football in with these younger guys that they're expecting to come in and make an impact. I think that's going to be great for them to really mold both of those two together. Mold that group together. I think they'll be able to feed off of each other. I definitely think that receiver rooms always work best when you have some young dudes in there that are really chomping at the bit and pushing those older guys. Because I'm not a receiver, but I see a lot of receivers and they get complacent sometimes. They get complacent. Like, if they know that they got the spot, like, yeah, man, like I'm not going that hard in practice. Like, y'all know what I do on Saturday, but when you got them young dudes behind you that's pushing you, now everybody is Now we all competing to see who's going up top first, So
that's why I like it, man. Devin, I think it's a great point, but I really think that that's my favorite part of this receiver room, how it's constructed. One, I think there's a lot of diversity from a skill set perspective. Like, you have the slot types, you have the big body guys, you have some speed, but more than anything, like, you're going to have a couple kids, like, let's say they get, obviously they already have Chris Mitchell, but let's say they also get like Josh Kelly from Washington State. Washington State's a Power 5 school. They're in the Pac-12, but still, that's still a step up to Notre Dame, right? Like, still a little bit of a step. And if you get a couple of those guys that are still coming here to try to prove that they are that guy, right? Because FIU Chris Mitchell is not Notre Dame Chris Mitchell. Like, you need to show that you're that dude, right? But then you have the mid-tier guys right now, the Jaden Thomases that CJ mentioned, and those guys that are veterans, but they have a lot to prove still, right? Like, they need to be hungry, or else they're probably going to enter the portal at some point too. Like, they need to show that they have that dog in them. And then the young guys are going to be chomping at the bit just to show that they belong on a college football field and belong in that blue and gold, right? So I think you have a room that it lacks like known commodities at the University of Notre Dame with transfers and guys that still have a lot to prove. But the fact that they have a lot to prove gives me a lot of optimism for how much they could surprise potentially in 2024. The fact that they're going to be going hard. Like, there's no who's the starter right now this preseason. Like, I have no idea who the starter is. I mean, by default, it'll be a couple of the veterans that have been there, but I mean, Jaden Thomas better be on his P's and Q's every day, or Chris Mitchell's going to come over and take his spot. Like, that's just kind of how it is, right? So I like that the room is built that way.
Definitely.
Absolutely. Sure. I mean, I think it's, it speaks a lot about, Notre Dame. I think, Coach Freeman too. Obviously Stucky wasn't his hire. I mean, not exactly his hire, the guy he wanted. So, as a defensive coach, you really got to get the guys, your guys on that offensive side that you really trust and that you want in the building, because at the end of the day, like, he's going to, the defense is going to be straight because we got our head coaches. That's his focus. He's going to focus on that defense. So the offense is always going to have a little rough part, as long as the Freeman era is in effect, I think in my opinion, just because defensive coaches usually have a little bit of a hard time with the offensive side. So especially once, definitely need them receivers to be solid. So, whoever comes in, whoever steps into that quarterback room, into that spot, it's an easier transition for him because, the head coach we know Freeman's a defensive guy, so he's not going to be focusing on that offense. Like,
I think it's tough for head coaches these days, man, because if you get you a good offensive coach, a good offensive coordinator, he's looking to get out of there and get your job or a job better than yours in a year or two if he's doing his thing. So I think it's tough to really secure like that offensive coordinator that you really gel and bond with,
That's where the eyes always go, man. Everybody always wants that young up-and-coming offensive coordinator as the next coach, right? Like that really revolutionary dude. I mean, the Garrett Rileys of the world. And I mean, we just saw Jeff Lebby get hired down at Mississippi State from Oklahoma. Like you always see that pitch, right? Because game is changing, right? Like I was a defensive guy, so it breaks my heart a little bit, but like offenses win championships now. Like defenses don't win as many championships anymore. Like it just is what it is. You know what I mean? So I think it's just kind of the evolution of where the game is, unfortunately, to a degree, but it's where we are.
Yeah. So as we're talking about these offenses, let's focus on let's see what signal caller the Irish are going to be going with next year. I'll go out on a limb and say this just to start it off, and I'll get you guys' opinions here. I don't want Riley Leonard. I'm just gonna be honest with you. I don't want him. I don't want him on the center. And I mean, and I like the Leonards. I've said this plenty of times. I went to high school with Riley's older cousin Danny. He was my kicker. So I love the Leonards. Their whole family is amazing. But Riley, man, I don't think that you're ready to be under the spotlight of a Notre Dame quarterback. It's okay. Like you can stay at Duke or you can go somewhere else and you can ball out and do your thing. But Notre Dame, I think we tried it with our portal quarterback this year. I don't think that the portal is a position. Like I don't think that's where we should go for a quarterback. That's just my opinion for Notre Dame.
Well, I think the vantage point coming into this process, Devin, was that, and this is just kind of from intel from just kind of some sources, is that Notre Dame was going to be in the market for quarterback no matter what, even if their thought process was transfer quarterback comes in and starts, or if they were just like, it's going to be between Steve Angeli, Kenny Minchie, and CJ Carr coming in, like one of those guys would start. They still had to bring in a quarterback because they wanted 4 scholarship kids in the room because, one guy transfers, one guy gets hurt, then you're like, oh, we only got 2 quarterbacks on the roster left, right? Like we're in a little bit of trouble here. So the question was always going to be, do you bring in a guy to compete for the starting job or to be the starter, or do you bring in a guy that's more for depth, right? Like maybe a guy that wants to be a grad assistant after he graduates, but like he's played a couple games. Like Ohio State did something similar when they brought in Tristan Gebbia last year. It's like Tristan Gebbia wasn't coming to Ohio State to start, right? Like he was just coming there to hold a clipboard and transition to the next stage of his life. But he was still a healthy arm in that room. Okay. Notre Dame, I think that because for me, like, I think that Notre Dame is going after Riley Leonard because that is the guy. Like, that's the only guy really on the board, in my opinion, as of right now. I mean, like, they've done their homework on a couple other guys that are out there in the portal, but they've really kind of circled in on Riley Leonard as like their target on the quarterback market. But I think their kind of thought process is we're not going to reach for someone, right? Like, I'm going to give an example that's a slightly disrespectful, but whatever. I'll explain it. So hopefully it doesn't come off as disrespectful, but like they're not going out and trying to get like Will Rogers from Mississippi State, right? Where you're looking at him and you're just like, hey, he's a system quarterback. If everything's good and everything's working, like he's fine, right? Like he's fine. He could be somewhat productive. But when you really look at him, you're like very system driven, right? Like he's not a guy that's going to necessarily elevate anything around him. He's just a guy that, if everything's working really well around him, he could be fine. He could be a solid player. They didn't want that type of guy because why would you go that route when you have talent in the quarterback room already? There is talent there, obviously.
Sure.
But I think that what they're going with Riley Leonard is because Riley Leonard is very talented, and I think that he brings a different skill set that you don't have in the room right now. Like, you just don't have that. You'll have that when Deuce Knight gets here in 2025, but until then, you have more of pocket-centric quarterbacks, some RPO skills, changing arm angles, like that type of stuff. But you don't have a guy that's an athlete like Riley Leonard is. You don't have a guy that next year, because anticipated right now, Joe Alt's going to go top 10 in the NFL draft. He's probably declaring early, like unless something catastrophic happens. Blake Fisher is also potentially going to go early. Like that one is less certain as of right now, but that might happen. You're going to have a young offensive line, a wide receiver room that is developing the cohesiveness. And I look at that situation and I say, you know what can ease some of those lumps early in the transition? An athletic quarterback that can get himself out of trouble sometimes, like Riley Leonard can make the wrong right at times. He can make the unopportune opportune at times. So that's why I'm on board with Riley, just for that simple fact that I think that he has kind of a get out of jail free card. That's kind of how I view him, right? Mm-hmm. And if he fails, you're still going to have those quarterbacks in the room. Like they're not all transferring, man. Like they'll still be there. So I think your perspective on that is more than fair. And if Notre Dame made the decision of we're going with one of the young guys, I'm cool with it because I love Kenny Minchie. I really like CJ Carr. I think it might be a year early for CJ, but like eventually I think CJ is going to be a really good player in college. And when Deuce gets here, like, yes, sir. Like that's a very talented quarterback room. Mm-hmm. So I'm good with that vantage point, but I ultimately think that's why they're pushing for Riley, is because Riley, I think if healthy, brings a dynamic skill set that they haven't really had in the room since
Book.
Yeah, a guy like
Sean.
Book for sure.
Bit,
Book
yeah. I mean, they really just haven't had that guy that's like, because Riley's like 6'4", 220, and he's going to run like 4'5" high. Like he can
move.
Fast,
he can move. He's definitely a mover. And I'll let you know who I like at the quarterback position. I think they said he was in the portal. Was that Dylan Gabriel? Did Dylan Gabriel hit the portal again from Oklahoma?
He did. You guys want a crazy backstory on that one? I got a little bit of a backstory on that one. So
let's hear it.
He was a Jeff Lebby guy, right? He was at UCF with Jeff Lebby. Jeff Lebby brought him to Oklahoma. That was his guy. And the minute that Jeff Lebby, so basically behind the scenes was a lot of people in the Oklahoma room, and this isn't as much as a rumor anymore. Like this has kind of been verified out there, but I got a little bit of intel like a couple days beforehand. But basically, the building was split on after their bye week. They actually wanted to go to Jackson Arnold, who's their true freshman in the building right now that Notre Dame fans know because Notre Dame did recruit him for a little bit. Quarterback out of Austin, not out of Austin Westlake. He was at I can't remember, but same high school as Peyton Bowen, but the name's escaping me at the moment. But so he was a, borderline 4-star, some consider him a 5-star. They were actually thinking about making the switch because that was just kind of the guy that they liked in the room. But they were never going to make that switch under Jeff Lebby because Dylan Gabriel was Lebby's guy. Like he wasn't just going to do it, right? The minute, though, that he decided that he was going to go to Mississippi State, Lebby, it was kind of a foregone conclusion that Dylan Gabriel wouldn't be back anymore. Like he was going to hit the portal. So a couple names that are popping out, like Mississippi State, obviously, that's where Lebby is. That would be a conversation. I've heard Oregon kind of associated with Dylan Gabriel a little bit. So we'll see where he ends up. But I mean, I like him a lot as a college quarterback. Yeah. I think he's a very
tough dude. And I think the transition from going from Oklahoma to Notre Dame is definitely a little more. It's a little easier than it would be going from Duke to Notre Dame. That's definitely a little less of a stress. He's probably be a little more prepared for that.
Listen, the Wake Forest, Duke, small, 20,000 people stadium, going to 20,000 to 80,000 is a big jump. The game day atmosphere is a little different, and even Riley Leonard, you can see he was a little shook when we played him this year, that from that atmosphere at Duke, and it wasn't a Notre Dame atmosphere. It wasn't a Notre Dame Clemson atmosphere or a Notre Dame USC atmosphere. So,
well, the crazy part is that if Riley comes to Notre Dame, they'll have their first game, which is most likely going to be against Army, even though they're dragging their feet announcing it. Second game though is going to be at Kyle Field down at Texas A&M, and that place gets rocking too, right? So that's going to be a interesting atmosphere for your first home away game as Notre Dame starting quarterback potentially. Yeah. So
for sure, man. I think that definitely
a little bit. They're not gonna be rocking for long. He'll be all right. He can get through that. No, they'll be rocking the beginning of the game, then like to A&M they
quiet down for sure.
Yeah. Yep.
A&M booty. That's
we ain't worried about that.
That's crazy though. His old coach is at A&M, right? Elko just got hired.
Mike Elko. Yep, he's over there now. So I mean, obviously, he spent a little time at Notre Dame as well. Which it'll be a cool storyline, though. If Riley ended up coming to Notre Dame and is First away game is against Coach Elko, and Elko has the Notre Dame ties as well. Like, it's interesting storyline for sure.
Definitely, definitely. I think
my opinion, I think we leave him at Duke, but obviously, he's probably coming at this point.
Most likely.
All the crystal balls are saying he's coming, so
most likely.
Well, my only thing, at this point, is just going kind of foregone conclusion, but I don't want him. He shouldn't have as much of a leash that Sam Hartman did this year, because after and even I still think after Ohio State, I think we're starting to rotate a little bit.
At least think about it, right? Yeah, I think the thought should have been out there. Yep.
Because now we got two guys who don't really even have much experience, and they're going to be competing against a guy who's been starting at another school. So I would have loved to seen Kenny Minchie down the stretch a little bit in a couple games, just see a little bit more of what you got. You saw a little bit of Steve Angeli, obviously, but I think there definitely should have been a little bit more of an evaluation period down the stretch. I think I agree 100%. I understand why they wanted to stick with him against Wake Forest, for instance, because obviously bench Sam against his former team, all that demographic and stuff. But I really do think that there should have been a package involved, right? At least get another quarterback in, get his feet wet, go out to Stanford, do the same thing. And then in the bowl game, it's kind of split right now as far as is Hartman going to play? Is he not going to play? And if in a ideal world, if you're talking about just for next year, then that last game, Angeli and Minchie both play. And then that's kind of the little bit of I don't want to call it an audition, but they're getting their feet wet. No,
obviously.
it is. Yeah. I don't think,
because you got to evaluate them. You got to evaluate them while they're getting some reps that matter.
Exactly.
Anybody can go in there and throw the ball around when we up 40 points. That's easy. That's anybody can do that. That's no pressure. You got to see how these guys react to some pressure, to some high intensity situations. Because I'm of the belief that even if Riley Leonard does come in, I think he should be slated as the starter, but I don't think he should just be given the full keys. It's just like you were saying, he shouldn't have it just have his cake and eat it too. I think
I 100% agree with that. And the great thing is that one thing that Coach Freeman he stresses all the time is competition, right? So 100%, I agree with you. No matter who comes in here as a not even just a quarterback, any transfer portal player that's coming in, any recruit that's coming in, every veteran that's coming back, unless you're Joe Alt, right, who's a returning All-American, a competition should be in there, right? There should be an ensue of uncomfortability and seeing kind of that sink and swim mentality of who's going to be that guy, who's not going to be that guy. And I think that some opportunities should be open there for sure. And unfortunately for Riley, Riley had a really nice 2022 season. Then 2023 season, obviously he gets banged up. He tries to come back. Then he hurts his foot and he's got an ankle and everything working against him. He's also coming off a year where it was lost. He had a lost year of development. So 100%, I agree with you 1,000,000,000% that if he comes up to Notre Dame, he has to win the job. This isn't just handed to him. The young cats that are there that know this offense should get even reps with him early on in camp, and they should decide from there. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. All right. Well, before we wrap up, we gotta touch because this has been definitely a very offensive centric episode. But we gotta throw a big shout out to Xavier Watts for winning the anniversary this year, man. Big shout out to the guy, man. You started off, I slated you as I knew you was gonna be the underdog of the year. And now, my good sir, you've graduated on to team industry. Because you're an award winner, the most industry, you feel me? That's what's up, man. I was so proud to see that, brother, and that's big shout out to him and to the defense as a whole. The D boys, they definitely they did their thing this year. They kept us in a lot of games, and I think they definitely played a big influence on the outcome of the season and making sure that we stayed in that top 15, that top 20, rankings.
I was so excited for Xavier because with how college football is now, with the transfer portal and guys jumping before they even graduate now, and not, I don't want to say fulfilling their obligation, but you can make that conversation a different way. But Xavier Watts had every right or every reason to just kind of pack it in, go somewhere else. Like, I'm not doing this. I mean, he went from wide receiver to rover to wide receiver to safety to splitting time at both. And most guys would just be like, I'm out of here, dude. Like, I'm not doing this. This is stupid. Like, I'm not doing this at all.
Yeah.
Right. And he's a Nebraska guy. He could have went to the University of Nebraska if he wanted to. He could have went back home. But that's the great stories about college football. It's why I grew up loving college football. Like, I was much more a college football than NFL guy because I love those types of stories and the actual love of the football, of love of the game and love of the program. And Xavier Watts is he's a great spokesman for the University of Notre Dame. The ability to get through the adversity and to be a team player, but then also when he gets his opportunity, wherever it ends up lying, he becomes a star and he leads to college football, obviously, in interceptions, Bronco Nagurski. Like, it's a great story, man. And as of right now, like, as of today, it sounds like he might come back next year. So, like, it's awesome, man. It's just wonderful. And even if he doesn't end up coming back, what a story, what a player. I mean, he really is, like, he's the epitome of what Notre Dame should stand for, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Sure.
Just, speaking on that, kind of the switching positions thing, I know all too well about it. I went from, safety to basically to safety to rover, back to safety to receiver to running back. So, I was kind of in that same position. And I remember after that move, they moved me from safety and moved me to like safety to rover. And I remember having that conversation with my parents, like, yo, should I leave? And, I sat down and talked to my parents for like a good, 2 hours. Like, should I leave? And like, they wanted me to leave. They were like, no, they're playing around with you too much. Like, they're not telling you what they want you to do. Like, you should go somewhere else and you should find what you like, where you really want to go. And I said, I literally sat there. I was like, you know what? I'm gonna stick it out. Like, I might not be the happiest right now, but I feel like I got a gut feeling like this is the right place for me. And I think for him, he might have had that same kind of feeling. I know Ian, we talked about, I think Ian said the same thing last week.
Mm-hmm.
I think that says a lot about Notre Dame guys. Even like Devin, you had a chance you could have probably transfer early. And then you were like, no, let me stick it out, get my degree and do it really what matters. So I think that's kind of what always drives the guys that go to Notre Dame, that obviously the degree, but I think we know like what the end goal is. We're not just there for the short term gain. We there for the the long term gain. So speaks a lot about him. I'm really happy for him, the season he had. My opinion, I hope he goes to the league, go get his money.
Go get your money, brother. Go get your money, man.
Come back to school. You can come back to school during the wintertime. You've been like, you feel me? So
he's already graduated, man. He graduated 3.5 years.
Oh yeah,
he got his degree.
He's gone. He's gone.
Go get your money, man. Go get your money, little bro, man. For real.
CJ, you are a great example, obviously, of this though, and I'm actually curious of like, so if you're getting just moved around constantly, like I think there's a fine line between coaches moving a player to find the best fit for them, and then the other line of moving a guy because he's versatile enough to fill a number, right? And that kind of, for me, like that's where I think it gets murky, is like, are they moving CJ Prosise a bunch of times because they think that he could really do great at X, Y, and Z? Same thing with Xavier Watts. Or are they moving because they didn't recruit well enough at a certain position, let's say, so like they have to get an extra number there. You know what I mean? And like in that situation, I don't blame a player for wanting to leave, right? Because like you can't tell me that you want best for me when you're just trying to obligate a number. You're not obligating a person, you're obligating a number. And I think that's the shame of college decisions sometimes, or coaching decisions in that type of situation. But yeah.
I mean, I think for me, coming in for me, I knew like a lot of schools wanted me at receiver and safety. So I knew I was kind of like in that athlete position. Like I didn't really have a set position. My mind, I was a safety. You couldn't tell me I wasn't. So when they were recruiting,
that boy ain't no safety, man. That boy ain't no safety. That boy wide receiver, man. That boy wide receiver.
I was not a safety. I was like, bro, I'm a safety. I am a safety. I'm gonna hit somebody. Like, I got up there and I was like, bro, I might be a receiver. Because if they put me on scout team, I started going like doing my thing on scout team, and and like just kind of to that point you just said, I had that feeling like, yeah, they're moving me, but like they're moving me because they know that I can do stuff. Like every time I went to somewhere, I wasn't just over there like like I'm getting pancaked at linebacker. No, I might have got pancaked one time at linebacker, but after that, I would go and get a sack. Like, you feel me? I wasn't gonna get manhandled. Like, so I think when you get guys like, I mean, that's really what you got to be in this game. You just got to be resilient because end of the day, man, you don't like, especially when you get to the league, you might not ever play. You might play safety. You might not ever play defensive snap. You might play 10 years on special teams, and you might get in on defense your 10th year in the 10th game of the season, or like the last game of the season, because somebody went down for injury. And that might be your only opportunity to play your whole career. So, like, just playing all those positions and playing every boy in the field, that just makes you a better football player. Because in the long run, you just want to be on that field playing.
It's not glamorous, man. I always think back to Matthew Slater, that's been with the Patriots forever, who's just like a great gunner and coverage guy, special teams wise. I think he's a wide receiver, right? And I think pretty sure he has like one career catch in like 12 years. You know what I mean? Like,
he don't care. He just like, I'm just going. But every time on punt, I am down there full speed making them fair catch it. Like, and it's crazy. Like that's his. He takes his job seriously. Like, this is my one job. I'm gonna do it right. Like,
no doubt.
Yeah. Well, Ryan, we definitely appreciate you for coming through and chopping it up with us, man. It's always a pleasure. You know, it's only right that we return the favor you had us on your show. So we definitely had to come and open the doors and welcome you to ours, brother. Thank you for coming through for sure.
All the insight, man. We appreciate all the insight for sure.
Oh no, man. I appreciate you guys for having me. I mean, you've had Brady Quinn on, you've had Ian Book, and I don't think Ryan Roberts quite fits into that tier, but I appreciate the time all the same, my guys.
Nah, you fitting in there now, man.
You got way more info. You got a little bit more info than them guys in the locker room. They just on the outside looking in like us. Like,
right. But yeah, thank you again, brother. Yeah. And as always, thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Lucky Underdogs podcast. Thank y'all for tuning in on Valley Sports in Ohio, on Spotify, on YouTube, or however you check out the podcast. Thank you for checking it out. As always, it's your boy DB signing off.
We out of here.